What's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It's the Earthmaster here on this finally Friday. Woohoo! November 18th, 2022. It's about 10:58 a.m. here along the West Coast where it's awfully windy. So if the stream does go down today, because of the wind, I'll definitely try to get that back up as soon as I can. Earthquake activity ramping up overnight. We did have an earthquake earlier this morning here, just off the coast of Oregon, into the Blanco fracture zone, just shy of the Cascadia megathrust area. The latest quake, though, here on the globe shows a 1.8 on the big island of Hawaii. Let's go ahead and check out the latest activity happening out here. We're going to start over here in the Java Trench, where we've seen a 6.9 earthquake earlier this morning, about 5:30 my time. Things kind of ramping up here over the last 2 days or so in this area. We did see a pretty good cluster of earthquakes along the Java Trench. Some of that area seen some deeper movement quakes as well, kind of leading up around the plate boundary. Tends to happen that way up towards the northern end. If we see some activity down here, deeper movements into the trench, we tend to get that surface activity ramping up, and that's what we've seen earlier this morning. That 6.9 really kicking up there. Pretty large earthquake, but this area can see some mega quakes for sure. I don't know if there's enough strain built up in this area for a mega quake or not, but so far we've seen a few aftershocks, one of 5.4, that one occurring just shortly after the 6.9 earthquake there into the area of Sumatra. The Java Trench area, some pretty high slip rate here, a lot of accumulated slip rate in a short amount of time within this region, but this is kind of one of our areas that we were watching, that along with the Kermadec Trench. Still haven't really seen a whole lot of activity down here through New Zealand. Always keep forgetting to turn off my alarm. And that's not to wake up. That's to, get an update in here in the busy morning hours. And some areas up here around the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench have not been hit yet either, considering all the movement we've seen last week with the earthquakes around Fiji and the Tonga area. So starting to fill in those blank spots, those seismic gaps here. And this is just one area, so I don't think we're going to see anything bigger around here, although I can't remember the last time there was a large quake, a super large quake. 6.9, yeah, it's pretty large, but it's been a while since we've seen any type of mega quake here on this area. So that's just one area that's seen a little bit of uptick overnight. Also prior to that, a little bit of activity. Down here, once again, around the Vanuatu area, New Caledonia area, seeing a 5.0. Into the Kermadec Trench region. Last night we did see things starting to ramp up here. I did pop up a earthquake watch here for New Zealand because it was starting to unzip a little bit down in this fashion from the north down to the south, where we've seen we've seen a 5.3 on the Kermadec Trench, and then a little bit of further activity down along the towards the surface area of the Kermadec Trench with that 4.6. But things now, at least for the morning so far, have not been super active according to the USGS. Even on the EMSC model globe here, looks like things are kind of taking a little break, getting a pretty good cluster of movement again over here across the Indonesia area towards where we've seen that 6.9, and also making some activity further up north around this area, around this plate boundary. Tends to go in that fashion up towards the north. A lot of northwestward pressure up here around the China area, up against the Myanmar area. And that could include areas around the Himalayas getting hit here pretty soon. China seen some earthquakes earlier this morning, 4.7 and a 5.0 in that area. Some earlier quakes there from yesterday. Well, actually, it looks like we had one after midnight there in China, 4.3. But over here, further west, that was from yesterday. So definitely a big push across the region here today. We'll watch for some further movement in those areas. The Kuril-Kamchatka Trench looks like right after midnight did have a 5.0 at 62 kilometers deep. But man, this area here is it's one of the most quietest zones I've seen in a while, far as a major subduction zone goes. So that area, I think, is it's just a matter of time. Who knows when, but watching that area pretty closely. South America region, nothing showing up here on the USGS map. Just double check that here with the EMSC. Looks like quite a bit of threes kicking off there, even a 4 up here on the northern end of the Peru-Chile Trench. Aside from that, most of the earthquakes there look like they're below the 4.0. I did see a 4.1 in this mix as well, but that could be the older earthquake listed up there. But either way, activity continuing there in the South America region. Just nothing really showing up on the USGS map because of their threshold, 4.0. Kind of wish they had an option here. But even if you go to like I'm on 1 day all magnitudes, it's only on the U.S. For whatever reason, I've never been able to find a all magnitudes worldwide map. Unfortunately, wish they had it, but that's just the deal. They don't not showing it on this model. Throughout the Caribbean plate and up here around Puerto Rico, things have died off drastically here. I remember over the past couple days we've seen quite a bit of activity off the coast here, Costa Rica and around the Puerto Rico Trench. There is still some movement here going on in the lower magnitudes, just off the area here of the Costa Rica region. Not showing up here on the map, but those are mostly threes. Some other earthquakes up here, a little odd earthquake in Georgia. That one coming in late last night, 2.3. Been a while since we've seen activity out here around the Georgia area. 5.5 kilometers deep. South America, or the South Carolina region, could be next on the activity map here because the Elgin area right near Lugoff sees quite a bit of activity. But technically only over the last 30 days of all magnitudes, they've only seen one earthquake. And sometimes swarms come in a pretty big fashion here around South Carolina. And this past month has not been one of them. So could be getting ready to show some earthquake activity there soon. Up here around Illinois, seen a 2.0, 16 kilometers deep. That is associated up there with the northern end of the New Madrid zone. It's going to be within this area right here. This New Madrid zone has been showing a little bit of heightened activity here over the past week or so in terms of earthquakes. The last 7 days of activity. We've got about 8 earthquakes or so here within this region. Last 30 days shows a little bit more, 33 earthquakes in this area of the New Madrid seismic zone there. Oklahoma, Texas area. As far as recent activity goes, looks like a couple small quakes there in Texas overnight. Most of the activity here on the map from yesterday. Up into the Yellowstone area in Wyoming, getting a little trail of activity stretching down here from, about the Utah area up into portions of Wyoming. Let me pull up the latest info here from Yellowstone National Park and see what we have here. For seismic activity, it looks like a couple small earthquakes earlier in the morning, somewhat quiet overnight. This is all from yesterday here. Quite a bit of small microquake activity, but things kind of dying down currently at Yellowstone National Park as far as the swarming goes. No unusual activity to note there across the board. Throughout the Pacific Northwest, pretty quiet. I don't know. That's kind of hard to believe. I'm sure there's something going on up there. Some type of microquakes, but not showing up here on the map. Off the coast of Oregon, there's that 4.5 on the Blanco fracture zone, just off of it there. It looks like, I wonder if that's going to be revised. Kind of looks like it's it's been reviewed. It is in a zone that does see quite a bit of activity across this fracture zone. It's the areas up north here along the Cascadia that has not seen any movement in well over 300 years and is capable of a 9.0 earthquake there for the Pacific Northwest and Northern California and subsequent areas around the Pacific as far as the tsunami goes. Northern California right now, pretty quiet. A little bit of activity around the Clear Lake Volcanic Field and the Bay Area. Looks pretty quiet as well until you get down here off of the Calaveras Fault Zone and the interchange here between the plate boundary and these little fault systems here. A little bit of movement today, nothing big. A couple small microquakes across the area. Sierra Nevada, pretty, looks about average here for any given day. A little bit of movement here around the Mammoth Lakes. That is going to be just outside the Long Valley supervolcano area. On that note, I want to check out, see what we got for the seismic activity over there. I mean, if they're showing a little bit of quakes, I kind of want to zoom in here and double check it myself, see what we got. We'll pull up. Let's see here. We'll pull up this one right here. I think still pretty green, normal, no unusual activity. Let's see if I can pull up this seismograph station here. I think this is the one. Nope. This is the one? Yeah, this is it. All right, so looks like that seismic activity that I was just showing you there on the map here, right around Long Valley supervolcano, is from overnight, late last night. And there was just a little handful of very small microquakes there and nothing throughout the morning or this early afternoon time period. So just a little bit of seismic activity there at Long Valley, which came and is now gone for the activity there. Southern California, getting a little cluster up here near Banning, it looks like, right just shy of the San Andreas Fault Zone here, just outside of the Desert Hot Springs region. Some activity kicking up there around Beaumont as well. Kind of looks like it's in that little crunch zone, the San Andreas Fault, along with a couple other smaller fault systems there. Seeing a little bit of cluster today. Let's see what else we got. Alaska area has been swarming pretty good overnight around the Anchorage area. Of course, we did see that, was it a 5-pointer coming in? 4.9 it looks like. I think that came in as a 5.1 just outside of Anchorage. Definitely seeing a pretty good amount of swarming within this area following that earthquake yesterday. And the aftershock sequences there continuing to this date overnight, along with some movement up here outside of Fairbanks. So we got a couple different areas showing some heightened movement. That's a sign of increasing pressure out here along the Pacific and the North American plate boundary, a subduction zone, which sits right about here in this area. So got to watch this pretty closely. This region right here, this little separate section here, has not really shown anything over the last 30 days far as anything above 4.0. If you look here along this segment, nothing's showing up. We've had some smaller quakes here, but I think it's noteworthy to maybe mention that we could be seeing something here above a 4.0 pretty soon, considering all that activity up there right now. Let's see what we got for the Big Island. Things kind of kicking up a little bit around the Pahala area. Latest quake shows at 1.8. Mauna Loa tapering off today. Looks like it's pausing for a little break there across the region. No major swarms to note there across the volcano. I'll watch that pretty closely. Let me pull up the GeoNet servers here for New Zealand and see what we have. Most of the activity there was from yesterday and a couple days past there. So things kind of taking a little break along that area since last night, but still definitely want to watch that, considering we really haven't seen too much movement on it. It's one of our quiet zones here across New Zealand. Watch that area. Coral Kamchatka Trench, Mariana Trench up here has been very quiet as well. So just a couple areas we're watching pretty closely. Let's see what else we have here. Tremor last night was pretty well, not large, but it was definitely on an uptick around the Oregon area. And that could have something to do with today's event. Well, I should say this morning's event there. Normally we see a lot of tremor activity, and that does add strain up here along the locked area. But when that locked area is kind of wound up so tight, we still see a lot of back building and some earthquakes further to the west here, where the directional plate movement here kind of back, like I mentioned, kind of back builds just a little bit from the regional pressure. Tremor activity down dip, getting in on some earthquake activity further upstream, further to the west, where all the pressure is kind of coming from. 4.5 there in the Blanco fracture zone. So we could, depending on what the tremor looks like today, we may see some further activity in that area. This is from yesterday. Remember, 218 epicenters of tremor. Now I want to go over here to the volcanic seismicity map here and see what we got. I just find it hard to believe that there's no earthquake activity anywhere across the Pacific Northwest or at any volcanoes. So I'd like to go to the live data, the recorded data, and see what we have across the area. All right, so that there, I believe, is going to be the 6.9. Let me double check here and see when this one kicked off. That was about 5:30 this morning, so that's going to be 13:37 UTC time. 13:37. So probably going to, looks like it starts right about here, but those S waves, those seismic waves there traveled for quite a while and pretty lengthy. But then again, it was almost a 7.0 earthquake over there along the Java Trench. And those big earthquakes will create a signature such as that. And then it looks like the 4.5 here came in. When was that? 1542. 1542. That kind of looks like, I wonder if I've seen it before. Sometimes these seismic waves here can actually trigger earthquakes at an incredible distance. You got to remember, these are kind of vibrational, low frequency vibrations traveling not only at the surface, but also through the surface, through the layers below, and around the globe. And sometimes these larger earthquakes, thousands of miles away, can actually trigger activity in certain regions if there's enough pressure built up. Kind of just like nudging a little domino. You know, if you just barely touch it, it sets off the entire chain of dominoes. But that's kind of interesting to see there. 6.9 followed up by a massive bunch of S waves there, and then a earthquake off the Oregon coast being triggered right there. Pretty crazy to see. Okay, so those are distant earthquakes, but as far as local seismic activity goes, definitely seen a couple of these overnight, and including this morning as well. Those are very small microquakes, but there is some. Just had to reassure my suspicion of absolutely no earthquakes, which are showing up here on the USGS map here for the Pacific Northwest. So things are active still around certain areas. Maybe they're working on their system. Wait a minute, I forgot. Today's Friday. 3-day weekend in effect. So we'll wait. A lot of times the USGS only puts on 2.5 and above here for the earthquakes, for the preliminary earthquake data system. So, alrighty. Let's see. All right, let's go over to solar weather here. Kind of checking in on this here. Looks like we got a little bit of flaring kicking up currently into the C flare category. Looks like a C4.6 currently coming in, creating a little bit of radio blackout there at the higher level frequencies of radio of the MHC and the low frequency range navigation systems coming in. There's a little bit of storming coming in, not thunderstorms, but some solar weather expected. Looks like the 19th and the 20th time frame from a coronal hole that's been facing us. That's going to be this guy right here, 46. Pretty massive, but it is kind of pointing here towards the south. But I think I'm not 100% certain if we're going to see just a glancing blow or a full-on effect from this high-speed solar wind stream that's flowing from this hole. Kind of looks like a face here right now. Got two eyes and the mouth, getting those facial features coming in again. So we'll watch that. It looks like at least the space weather folks here think that we may see a glancing blow around the 19th and the 20th time frame with a little bit of elevated percentages for some auroras at the higher latitudes and maybe the mid latitudes. So we'll watch that pretty closely. The flaring activity looks as though it's coming from this region right here. Notice the pretty nice signature here of the little bitty flare, but that's coming off of a pretty certain that's a fairly new sunspot. I want to save that image there. See which one that is. Looks like 3150. One of the newest, actually it is the newest named sunspot. Getting pretty dynamic here, growing pretty rapidly just in a short amount of time. Remember checking that last night. It didn't look wasn't like that. It kind of just popped up out of the blue. These solar sunspots can form pretty drastically and pretty dramatically. They can get these complex magnetic fields in a hurry. So yeah, that one's flaring, currently flaring. We've seen it here, right here on the image. These other sunspots here, this one's kind of growing, but doesn't look as complex as even this little bitty one. Getting a lot of the notice these polarities. I don't know if you guys can see it on your end, but the intermixing here of the polarities of the fields, creating some sparking out there, a little bit of flaring, instability. So yeah, that's kind of cool to see. New sunspot. 45% chance for a C flare, M flare at 10%, 1% for an X flare. But those may be were forecasted prior to the evolution of this new sunspot there. Let's see what else we got. I think that's about it, folks. So we'll keep an eye on that one, see if we can't get a... I don't think it's going to produce an M flare, but it looks like it wants to produce a bunch of C flares, so we'll keep an eye on it. Current solar wind stream, getting a little bit of some odd conditions here. A little bit of density peeking out there, a little bit of tilt in the BZ component. Looks like some density increasing along with some speed, allowing some solar wind stream to flow in. Let me check the aurora forecast. Looks like elevated conditions here currently on both the polar sections. Definitely weren't calling for that, but things can change with the space weather. So it looks like maybe a potential to see some auroras tonight at the higher latitudes, and then again on the 19th and 20th time frame once that coronal hole, high wind stream flowing from it reaches Earth. Should see that elevate as well, unless it completely misses us. But we'll definitely keep a watchful eye on it. All right, folks. Live stream is up and running. It did go down just a little bit ago because we've got some pretty high wind out here. Not solar wind, but some gusty winds out of the north up to about 40-45 miles per hour today. So it knocked off the power just for a split second, long enough to bring the stream down. Hoping that we're done with the wind. It's kind of calming down a little bit out there, but still forecasted to be gusty off and on today. So if the stream does go down, we'll go ahead and pull it back up once the wind dies down. But for now, it's up and running. Have a good day, folks. Keep a watchful eye on a couple areas out there. We'll catch you guys a little bit later tonight with the update. Peace out.